Today we're going to be talking about section 9.6, function values of special angles. So to start off, let's do a little review of this 30, 60, 90 triangle. Remember way back when, I think we had different side lengths, but this time we're using 666 on the equilateral triangle. So you should remember then that your angles are always 60, 60, and 60. And then if we are looking to form a 30, 60, 90 triangle, we can draw down an altitude from B to side AC. And so we can call that D. And what that gives us is triangle ABD. This would be 3. This is still 60, 90. This is 6. And this is 30. And then by using the Pythagorean theorem, we should obtain that the side opposite the 60 is going to be 3 radical 3. So 6 squared equals, not plus. So 6 squared should equal 3 squared plus x or y squared. So 36 equals 9 plus x squared equals 27, and so x would be the square root of 27, which is 3 radical 3. So remember the side opposite the x, or the 30 is x, the side opposite the 60 is x radical 3, and the side opposite the 90, or the hypotenuse, is 2 times the value. And it happens no matter what side lengths you begin with in an equilateral triangle. On the isosceles right triangle, if we're looking for the hypotenuse, which is, call that x, this was the value we found there. We'll call this one x. That would be 5 squared plus 5 squared equals x squared. That's 25 plus 25, which is 50. And then the square root of 50 turns out to be 5 radical 2. So this is 5 radical 2. That's an equal sign. So the sides opposite the 45 are x and x, and it will always work out. The side opposite the 90, if it's an isosceles right triangle, will be x radical 2. So now, using those values, we again figured out the sine of 30 was 1 over 2. The sine of 45 was radical 2 over 2, and the sine of 60 is radical 3 over 2. But I like to just have the chart memorized: 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. 2's in the bottom, square root the tops. So cosine of 30 was radical 3 over 2. Again, cosine of 45, radical 2 over 2, and then 1/2. Tan of 30 is sine over cos, which turned out to be 1 over radical 3, or radical 3 over 3. 45 tan was 1, and the tan of 60 turned out to be radical 3. Radical 3 over 2 divided by 1 over 2 is radical 3 over 1. So if we wanted to then find the cosecant and the secant and the cotangent of those angles, remember they're just reciprocals. So all I have to do is reciprocate them. So I'm going to go 2 over 1, 2 over radical 2, 2 over radical 3, 2 over radical 3, 2 over radical 2. I'm now flipping cosine. 2 over 1. So for cosecant, I'm flipping the sine. For secant, I'm flipping cosine, and cotan, I'm flipping tan. So if I flip the 1 over radical 3, I'd get radical 3. If I reciprocate 1, I get 1. And if I reciprocate radical 3, I get 1 over radical 3, which is equal to radical 3 over 3. You do not necessarily need to rationalize the denominators for these, but you should when you're solving problems, in actual problems with them. So now to figure out the quadrantals, I'm going to use that unit circle. So this is 1, 0, 0, comma 1, negative 1, comma 0, and 0, comma negative 1. And then this is 0 degrees, this is 90, 180, and 270. And I'm going counterclockwise, I'm going with the positives. So the sign of 0 is, if I take a look at the sign of 0, 90, 180, and 270, it is the y-coordinate all the way around. So sine, 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 and sine. So the sign of 0 is 0. The sign of 90 is 1. I'm just going around with the y-coordinates. Sign of 180, 0. Sign of 270, negative 1. So then let's take a look at the cosine. The cosine's all your x-coordinates on the unit circle. So the cosine of 0 is 1. The cosine of 90, I'm just looking at the x-coordinate, is 0. Cosine of 180 is negative 1, and the cosine of 270 is also 0. Now, tangent is sine divided by cosine. So all we have to do is take 0 divided by 1 here. Okay, and actually I could do the top one in green and divided by 1, which is what we had up above, and that's equal to 0. These would be 1 divided by 0. That's undefined. 0 divided by negative 1, 0, and negative 1 divided by 0. So I am, that's undefined. So I'm literally for tangent taking and doing sine divided by cosine. For cosecant, I'm just going to reciprocate. Now, if the sine of 0 degrees is 0, that written as a fraction is 0 over 1. So then, therefore, if we were going to reciprocate that, it'd be 1 over 0, or undefined. So the reciprocal of undefined is 0, and the reciprocal of 0 is undefined. So for cosecant, the reciprocal of 0, undefined. For secant to cosine, the reciprocal is just 1. Cotan to tan, the reciprocal of 0, undefined. For 90, cosecant of 90, I'm going to look at the sine of 90. That's 1. So I'm going to take the reciprocal, that's just 1. The reciprocal of 0, the cosine of 90, I'm looking at the one in red up here, is undefined. And then the cotan of 90 would be the reciprocal of undefined, which would be 0. That's a little tricky. The cosecant of 180 would be then undefined. It's just reciprocal, negative 1 and undefined. The reciprocal of negative 1 is negative 1. The reciprocal of 0 is undefined. The reciprocal of undefined is 0. So now we've got quite a complete chart. Go to the next page. And when it says find the exact value, that means radicals. Okay? No decimals. There might not be radicals, so that's okay too. The cosecant of 30, we already did from the previous page. I'm not going to keep looking back here, but you can. Cosecant of 30 is 2. You can also just realize it's the reciprocal of the sine of 30. So the sine of 30 is 1/2, so the cosecant of 30 is 2 over 1, or just 2. The cotan of 45 relates to the tan of 45. Well, the tan of 45 is 1, so the cotan of 45 is also 1. It's just a reciprocal. The cosine of 0 degrees was 1, and the reciprocal of 1 is 1. The cosecant of 180 would relate to the sine of 180. The sine of 180 was 0, so the reciprocal of 0 is undefined. So the cosecant of 180 is undefined. Cotan of 90 would relate to the tangent of 90. The tangent of 90 was undefined. Remember, undefined is 1 over 0. So the reciprocal of 1 over 0 would be 0 over 1, or 0. Secant of 270 would relate to the cosine of 270. The cosine of 270, I'm down here. I just see my diagram now. It's 0. So the reciprocal of 0 is undefined. So the secant of 270 is undefined. The cotan of 270 relates to the tangent of 270. Well, the tangent of 270 would be the sine of 270 over the cosine of 270, which is negative 1 over 0. That's undefined. I want the reciprocal of that, so that's going to be 0. The reciprocal of undefined is 0. Then I'm doing the sine of 0. Okay, so that's the y-coordinate here, which is 0. The cosine of 0, which is the x-coordinate there, that's 1. And the tan of 0 is 0 divided by 1, or 0, so this just ends up being 1. Next, the secant of 45 squared means I want the cosine of 45 flipped. So the cos of 45 is radical 2 over 2, so secant of 45 is 2 over radical 2. The tan of 45 is just 1. So 2 over radical 2 squared is 4 over 2 minus 1, which is 2 minus 1, or 1. I just squared 2, and I squared radical 2 and got 4 over 2. Number 10, sine of 30 is 1/2. Secant of 60 relates to the cos of 60. The cos of 60 is 1/2, so the secant of 60 is 2 over 1. Cosecant of 45 relates to the sine of 45, which is radical 2 over 2. So cosecant of 45 is 2 over radical 2. I'm going to put my denominator of 1 in there, cross simplify those 2's, and I end up with 2 over radical 2. Going to rationalize that denominator. 2 radical 2 over 2. Final answer, radical 2, because those will simplify. Number 11, the tan of 30 divided by the cos of 60. So that's radical 3 over 3 divided by 1/2. So I'm going to do radical 3 over 3 times the reciprocal of cos 60, so 2 over 1. Final answer, 2 radical 3 over 3. Tan of 135. Okay, that's a little tricky. That is related to the tan of 45. It's negative 1. Okay, we're going to learn more about how to find that. Just trust me on that one for now. The secant of 30 is 2 over radical 3. So the answer is not just negative 2 over radical 3. We do have to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 2 over radical 3, which is radical 3 over 2. Final answer is negative radical 3 over 2. 13, cotan squared 60 is the same as cotan 60 squared. Cosecant squared 60 is the same as cosecant 60 squared, kind of like we wrote it up in number 9. So it just means take the cotan of 60, whatever that is, and multiply it times itself. So the cotan of 60 is related to the tan of 60. So the tan of 60 is equal to radical 3, so cotan of 60 is 1 over radical 3. Cosecant of 60 relates to the sine of 60, and the sine of 60 is radical 3 over 2. So cosecant of 60 is 2 over radical 3. So square those and you get 1 over 3 minus 4 over 3, which is negative 3 over 3, or negative 1. And the last one, the sine squared of 30, is really the same as the sine of 30 squared. And that is just equal to 1/2 squared, which equals 1/4. Okay, so really should know that chart in the unit circle. Have a good night.